Happy politics, and welcome to what I know is your favorite BC political podcast. That's a tough thing to say all at once. BC political podcast. We'll fix that in post. My name is Maclean K. I got that right, and I'm joined in a socially distant manner by...
It's Jordan Bateman over here in beautiful Burnaby, British Columbia, Canada.
A lesser podcast host, Jordan, would have said, let's do that over, since we're not doing this live, we're doing it to tape. But no, I want people to see the show, warts and all. My camera is slightly not level. I stumbled over the phrase political podcast, which I've probably said hundreds of times, and yet we're just going to chug along because this show is better this way.
It's about authenticity. Authenticity, transparency, openness. That's what we stand for here on the BC Poly Hot Stove.
What you just said perfectly, making me look even worse. Jordan, last week we deferred a usual segment we've been doing on the show. You've been giving updates on the BC Liberal leadership race. There was no news. That is not the case this week.
No.
There is lots of news. Where do you want to start? We have two new official entrants. One made a big splash. One sort of stuck their toe in the water, but in an official way, if you like. Why don't we start with the official launch? Kevin Falcon announced over the weekend he was ready, set, and go. Was yesterday with a very professional and I was going to use the word glitzy, but I don't want to sound negative. It was very professional and very slick, very well done Facebook Live launch event.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to welcome the BC media pool to the coverage of the BC Liberal leadership race. It's nice to have you guys on board finally, but there's some, you're right, big news. So Kevin Falcon, widely considered the overwhelming favorite at this point in the race, finally got in yesterday. You're right. You know, it was about as good a Zoom campaign launch as you could have. It was actually 20 minutes or so of compelling, I was going to say television. I mean, I guess you're watching on a screen. Look, it wasn't a great episode of The Simpsons, kind of compelling, but it was, for a political launch, very compelling. It engaged you. They did a great job of having 3 different validators, who we can talk about in a second. They had videos in between. They reintroduced us to Kevin and his family, and then a speech by Kevin that had enough substance to be of interest. There's lots to chew on as a BC Liberal member, but was still open-ended enough to say, hey, I don't have all the solutions. We're going to go on this journey together and find out what happens. Great launch, and kudos to their team. That was a very slickly, very nicely packaged launch in the Zoom era.
Yeah, and 2 observations. The first one is they resisted the temptation to go way too long. I think you said it was 22 minutes, so it's basically the length of a sitcom minus commercials, which is that's a good length. I have said this many times before. Even if you love the person who's speaking, no one has ever sat through a political speech, especially at home, and said, "Man, I wish that was longer." So getting all that into 22 minutes was I thought very well done. Yeah, I mean, and the big news that everyone has latched onto is yes, he has said he wants to change the name of the BC Liberal Party. It's come up a number of times in the past. What do you think?
Well, look, we have precedent for this in BC. The BC Liberal Party was really the SoCred party reformed. It makes sense to go forward with a new name, a new brand, especially to steal an old term from Gordon Campbell. You want a new era of center-right coalition building. Look, the speech was important in a number of ways. And the videos. Number one, there was video of he and his family walking across a rainbow crosswalk. Obviously, that has resonance considering what happened in the last campaign for the Liberals. He very clearly stated everyone is welcome in the BC Liberal, or soon to be rebranded, coalition in his party. There'll be no standing for racism or transphobia or homophobia or any of that. We welcome all folks in. Those were, that is a good note to get off on, I think. That is showing that, hey, I'm reflecting on some of the mistakes of the past, and I'm bridging to the future and how to solve them. I like that a lot. So kudos to him. The funny thing about Kevin is that he obviously is has a very powerful brand among some voters. I would say, if you're over the age of 35, maybe 40, you remember Kevin Falcon, but it has been 10 years since he's been in power. And, I saw one tweet from actually a viewer of the show, Brian McKenna, who, was kind of saying, going back and forth with me a little bit, like, I don't know if Kevin's brand of conservatism will sell in this day and age. My point to that would be, look, we don't really know what Kevin Falcon's brand of conservatism is anymore. 10 years is a long time to be out of politics. My views have certainly evolved over 10 years. I know yours have, Maclean. Well, many people's views have evolved over the past 10 years. Barack Obama's views have changed.
Yeah.
Joe Biden's, Hillary Clinton's, right? Like, many of our views have evolved over this period of time. Things that we thought were important back then aren't important anymore. Things that, maybe, stands that were being taken that you're not comfortable with, that is all open to being changed. And so, in fairness to Kevin, like, we should probably wait and see. Like, let's hear from him what his views are before we just automatically, rubber stamp him as, he's a, Gordon Campbell era BC Liberal. He's almost 60 years old. Well, he looks very young, Kevin, no problem. He, obviously he's not the young firebrand in the mid-90s who were, gathering people in Cloverdale for the Have You Had Enough of the NDP rallies. He's not the young deregulation minister of State for Deregulation in that first 2001 to 05 term, who, went through all of the, red tape and tried to cut a bunch of that. He's not even the high-flying transportation minister. You think of transportation ministers in BC, you think of three. You think of Flying Phil Gillardy, Alex Fraser, Kevin Falcon. And they had very similar kind of stands. Oh, I know you love Claire Trevina, but come on. Maclean, don't even start with me. But those are the three, I think, key ones. And so, you have all that going on, and you're like, okay, like this could be an interesting candidacy. And look, very clearly he's got an excellent team. They obviously have money. Those videos were, I don't think they're expensive videos, but they weren't cheap. And today he's out there doing media. Tonight he has a town hall with BC Liberal members. So, he's trying to continue the momentum from a really good launch.
Yeah, it's you're right. One other thing that I thought was interesting is, other than, of course, himself, the two faces he had on his launch were Puneet Sandar and Diane Watts, which is interesting on a number of levels. Diane Watts, for starters, former mayor of Surrey, as you know, was either finished first or second in the signing up new members in the last BC Liberal leadership race, and of course finished a very close second to Andrew Wilkinson. And Puneet Sandar was one of the co-chairs of Michael Lee's campaign, which either finished first or second for signing up new members, and ended up finishing third. And so it was a very, I thought, smart sort of signal that it's not just, the old band from 2011 back together again. There's people that have been more active since, and in comparatively successful campaigns. Yeah,
and look, Diane and Kevin have been on a long journey together in politics in Surrey. Surrey's a big city, but it's a small place for politics. She was the mayor, he was a prominent cabinet minister. They've worked together on the files. They worked against each other in a couple of campaigns. But, I think a tribute to both of them in the hard work and understanding of the other's role in the Surrey political ecosystem and in British Columbia generally. That Diane is willing to be co-chair, sign on, and gave a very unabashed endorsement of him, really made it clear that she thinks Kevin's the right person for this job at this time, which is great. And Puneet Sandar, I have a lot of time for. I think she's brilliant. I think she ran for the Liberals. I can't remember. It wasn't 2020, but it was 2017 maybe?
She ran in 2017, I believe, yeah. In one of the Surrey ridings, I forget which one.
Yeah, disappointing she didn't win that because I think she would have made an excellent MLA. An important person in BC Liberal land, and I think a good pickup. And I understand the other co-chair of their campaign is Wade Grant from the Musqueam First Nation. Again, showing this kind of broader coalition that's being built by Kevin Falcon and his team. So yeah, you're right. It was pitch perfect choices. I found it interesting. There's certain things he's learned from in 2011. 2011. The Falcon campaign was very heavily the anti-Christie campaign, right? And so anyone but Christie was coalesced around Kevin Falcon. And that included a number of MLAs. I think he had, by the end of it, a couple dozen MLAs, BC Liberal MLAs, who supported him. And on day one, he rolled out 12 or 15 of them. That didn't happen. Maybe it's going to happen later this week. A few MLAs will come out with their endorsements. I'll let you in on a secret. Kevin Falcon didn't win that campaign, so maybe MLA endorsements don't mean as much as you think. But, obviously, that will be, it's important to have validators and to show that caucus would follow you if you were elected leader. So I don't have any inside information. My suspicion is at some point they'll roll out some MLA endorsements here, but clearly not the priority on day one. And I think that was a smart move.
Yeah, and we mentioned the Michael Lee campaign from 2018, and of course he is the other now official candidate. Now he didn't have the big official launch that Falcon did. He just released sort of an announcement tweet with him running and audio of him running, I guess. But it has been we all knew he was running. This was not even really a rumor, just sort of a well-known thing. And now it's a publicly well-known thing. And, he, again, not an official launch yesterday, but got his toe in the water. And, as I think you mentioned earlier, it's smart because he knew that Kevin Falcon was going to get a lot of media attention yesterday. And so even just mentioning that and Michael Lee is a candidate, why not? Yeah,
well, exactly. So, you might be sitting back and going, what's Michael Lee doing? Why put that little 6-second video out of him running in the woods? And a little heavy breathing there, Michael. Like, settle down. Like, come on. Just teasing. But, why put that video out? Got a lot of attention online. Why put it out now and not have an official launch? Well, you don't want to compete with Kevin Falcon. Like, everyone's launch day is their best day, right? Like, that is, you control the message, you control the narrative, and, you get out there and you connect with your supporters. But what he did was he was almost like a pebble in the shoe of Kevin Falcon. So in every story that's going to be written about Kevin Falcon's campaign launch, there's going to be a paragraph. Another key leadership contender, Michael Lee, who finished third in whatever, he put out a video and he says he's running, an official launch to come sooner than later. Perfect. You're in every story. You're not competing with them, but you're just that little piece of gravel in the shoe, to use the running analogy, that kind of every time, Team Falcon steps, they feel it under there and they're like, wish we could get that out of our shoe. So. Good on them. Gavin Dew, meanwhile, did another policy pronouncement or sent out another news release. That was interesting. But, look, Maclean, we got to talk about the big thing here on the Falcon launch. The NDP, for a party who claims that they really, really want Kevin Falcon to win and they really want to run against him because they really think they have all these bullets that they can use on him, sure seems scared of Kevin Falcon, because they came out with like a backgrounder and messaging, and their trolls on Twitter were just like full bore on the anti Kevin Falcon rhetoric. If you wanted to run against him, wouldn't you save some of that for when he's the leader? Like, why are you pulling that out now and giving him all this chance? Methinks the NDP doth protest too much about wanting to run against Kevin Falcon.
I mean, you could be right. The NDP sent out one initial release about Gavin Dew. I have not seen anything else, and it's possible there have been more, but I only noticed the one. I have seen nothing on Ellis Ross. Nothing at all. By nothing, I mean from the NDP.
Yeah.
And to be fair, Michael Lee's video was just yesterday, and so we could well yet see that. But yeah, you're right. There has been an inordinate amount of tension foisted on Kevin Falcon. And I mean, whatever else you want to get from it, you can probably infer that the NDP certainly see him as the front runner and are treating him as such.
Yeah. No, you're right. It just seems weird to me that they would claim they don't want to run, or they want to run against him, but then they'd be out to try to suffocate his campaign early.
Yeah, you're right. Tactically, it's odd. I mean, you wouldn't want to save all of your bullets for the end, which is an unfortunate phrase on my part. But still, it's one of those. I think they probably want to help set a narrative, would be my guess. But you're right. It does seem like they're kind of front loading. I mean, and the attention they giving him is not new yesterday. I mean, the Attorney General has been devoting a segment of his podcast every week for some time about Kevin Falcon. I mean, they're very aware of him. And as I say, they are treating him as though he is the, not just the favorite, but like the massive front runner, the overwhelming favorite.
Like, here's what a Kevin Falcon leadership would look like, I think. You wouldn't have any more of that. Sometimes oppositions can be a little bit, especially ones that have been in power a long time, get a little bit scared of the ministers on the other side. Like, you put out a question and then, they don't care, the government don't answer it, and they go back to triple delete or, XYZ scandal in the BC Liberal Times, 16 years of, blah, blah, blah. And, I think some of our frustration on people on the BC Liberal, side is that, like, I don't know, every once in a while the opposition seems to kind of go quiet or turtle ever so slightly, like, or bristle at the criticism. Kevin Falcon wouldn't stand for it. Like Falcon, very gifted, guy in the House. He would, if he is elected leader and is in question period, he will throw it at Horgan. He will go haymaker for haymaker with Adrian Dick. Well, Adrian Dick doesn't throw haymakers, but haymaker for haymaker with David Eby. He will go he'll be ready on day one to command that legislature in question period, which will be an interesting dynamic because Shirley Bond's been excellent, but I think Shirley Bond will be the first fellow who's like, I'm a placeholder. I'm here until the next leader is elected. And so you don't have that same gravitas or that same feeling like, oh, it's going to be Shirley Bond versus John Horgan in a debate at the election campaign, and this is a preview of that. I think there is an appetite for that in the soon-to-be rebranded BC Liberal Party, where I think this is where Aaron Gunn gets some support. Folks are tired of kowtowing and seem to be being embarrassed by the 16 years in power. Like, yeah, not everything they did was perfect, but let's remember some of the big successes here. Without the BC Liberals, there's no Olympic Games. Sea to Sky isn't rebuilt. There's no Newport Man. You can go through the list, right? So, I think it's important that, there's a swagger to Falcon that I think will be interesting to see over the next few months. Look, the one thing about these candidates is I've had the opportunity now to speak to many of them personally, and I'm much higher on this field than I was on the field in 2017. This is a good field of candidates. You talk to them individually; they're smart. They care, they're all in, they have ideas, but they're willing to listen. And the Ellis Rosses, the Mike Lees, the Kevin Falcon, Renee Merrifield, even Aaron Gunn, Gavin Dew, these are smart folks who have different perspectives to offer. And I'm excited about this race. I think it's a chance not just to rebrand the party, but to actually redefine what does a free enterprise coalition, not that they would use that term anymore, look like going forward. And that's the piece here. A lot of what leadership is about has to be about creating hope within your party's base. I would say that more of us are hopeful after watching Kevin Falcon's very strong start last night than we were 3 months ago.
Well, as I say, it was a strong launch. We kind of sidestepped around it. The idea of the name change has come up. Here's my take on the name change. You need something better, and I don't know what that is. To me, the obvious answer is the BC Party. That's taken, apparently. Now, that's not to say it's not possible to come up with a better name. It's that, to me, there isn't that obvious, well, we should be called that the party would be allowed to call itself. So that's my hesitation. I am a cautious man by nature, as you've come to know very well. Yeah. But so that's my response, is that I would hope that there would have, not a, party McParty face contest, and that there's we being the Falcon campaign has, something in mind. I don't know. I have no idea. That's my initial response, is sort of like, whoa, let's just make sure that there's a better option on deck. Yeah. But if there may well be.
Yeah. Oh, I think there will be. Look, lots of political party names are just word soup. What's a new Democratic Party? True. They're not new. Yeah. They're not terribly democratic, as they appoint candidates, and they're not much of a party. They're not fun at all. What's the UCP, right? The United Conservative Party. What does that mean? Progressive Conservative Party was one of the great ones. What's a progressive conservative? It's it's an oxymoron, right? It's like political strategist.
Social credit was one of those things that kind of meant nothing as the years went on.
Exactly. Yeah. So what does it mean? So there's I'm not so worried about that. There'll be a catchy brand and a little logo, but the key is, it'll be the Falcon Party or the Ellis Ross Party or the Michael Lee Party or whoever wins. The Renee Merrifield Party. That will be the team, and they'll go from there. A few notes. Ellis Ross has a website now. He still doesn't have that official kind of launch. He may not. I actually think Ellis Ross is a bit of the old John McCain model, the Straight Talk Express, right? If there's one person in this race who I think could do what Jason Kenney did with the blue pickup truck and driving around Alberta, I think it's Ellis Ross. I could just picture him in a white pickup truck driving around British Columbia and meeting with people all over the place. Just feels right to me, right? A little bit of that old Straight Talk Express. Mike Lee, we talked about, I think he's going to have a proper campaign launch coming up. Renee Merrifield, I haven't heard anything. I know she's put together a very good team, so I imagine they are looking at their options. Again, I would think June, early June would be my bet. I can tell you, talk to Aaron Gunn. So great thing about candidates who are good on social media is they get back to you right away when you DM them. Aaron Gunn got back to me. I said, what's the status of your campaign? Are you in? Yeah, what's going on? And his sense was like, he doesn't really need to make a decision yet. For him, and I think he's right on this. I think for him, with his social media following, for him to be successful in this race, it would be about converting that social media following into memberships. Well, yes. I don't think that's a 6-month project. I think it's a 30 to 45 day hard sell project. So he doesn't have the same impetus to jump into the race now. Now, he still needs to make sure that he's got enough, second and third place votes among other candidates, but you can kind of work that out through coalitions towards the end. When like I've signed up 15,000 new members, everyone's going to want to have that deal with you for when you fall off, if you fall off the ballot first. So I thought that's probably true. I think, he may end up being the last person to get into the race if he does it all. Gives him plenty of time to talk himself out of it. And like I said, it's more of a social media sell than anything else. And I think, I think he's positioned to do that. And either it happens or it doesn't. We don't really have any background as to whether it goes on like that. The two I'm curious about, and then Gavin Dew continues on, obviously, with very smart policy prescriptions and doing what Gavin Dew does, which is smart, family-focused, millennial-focused policy. That's his strength, and he's sticking to it. The two I'm curious about now, though, are Litwin and Shapitka. I've not heard anything from either of them in a long time. I wonder if maybe they kicked the tires and bowed out. It's Morris and Bernier who confirmed they weren't running. Is Shapitka still in that same kind of maybe? I think I had mentally filed him with Bernier and Morris, but I could not find him officially ruling himself out. So I'm curious about that. So we will see. I guess Lee and Merrifield will be next to declare, and Litwin and Shapitka sort of on the bubble. Team Litwin, Team Shapitka. If you are planning to run, let us know because we'd like to. We're curious. There you go. My DMs are open too. We are curious. It's gonna be an interesting year. Yeah. Normally this is the segment that we load at the back because it's been kind of what's new, and it's usually one or two little tidbits and little tasty bits of insider info. This week it's like this is legitimately the headline, and so it feels which is a long way of saying I feel like the show's over because this is usually how we end the show. I'm kind of like, well, see you next week. Good night, everyone. You mentioned I was in meetings all morning, but you mentioned something funny in QP today. Yeah. It's the back half of QP was focused on the Alaska cruise ship, the cruise ship industry here in BC, and the bill that has passed the Senate, which gives cruise ship operators the ability. John Horgan told me that bill was dead on arrival, was never going to pass. What are you talking about? He did in fact say that. It has passed the Senate. It does have to be passed by the House of Representatives, and it does have to be signed by the president, but that's going to happen. And apparently signed off by the CDC as well, which I'm less clear on, but fair enough. It's also, here's the problem, as you're right. It was pointed out, the Premier had said it was never going to get this far, and it has in fact passed the Senate unanimously. So it's at the point now where you could start worrying a little bit, and the bill is written in such a way that it is supposed to expire when the borders are reopened. But once a thing is in place, especially when we're talking about the Americans, these are not unreasonable fears, I think, to bring up. Certainly the tourism industry is terrified. So anyway, the reason for bringing all this up is it was the subject of about half of question period today with Tourism Minister Melanie Mark, saying that she is completely confident. In fact, she is the exact phrase is, "We are arrogant in our confidence that that tourists will return to BC, et cetera, and so forth." I thought I misheard it, but Hansard has confirmed, and in fact, to be fair, the NDP have confirmed it as well. It was an off-the-cuff thing said by a minister on the hot seat, but
I mean, it's the kind of thing that can stick. It was an extremely poor choice of words. I'm sure she regretted it immediately, but I mean, what's said is said.
Yeah. Well, now every question to her has to start with, Minister, how arrogant in your confidence are you on this issue? Okay, a few things on this. I don't understand I don't understand the American prohibition on this anyways, that the law is going to change temporarily. So apparently they have some rule where if a ship is built outside America, it goes from an American port, it has to go to another international port before it can go to an American port again. I do not get that. I guess it's a protectionism thing to make sure as many ships are built in America as possible. But it seems really dumb. Like I just don't understand that at all. Which is why I think the cruise ship industry is like, oh crap, someone's onto our little loophole here, right? Like the BC cruise ship industry, someone's onto our loophole here that forces them to land in Victoria, Vancouver, Nanaimo. I think Campbell River had a cruise ship dock for a while. Like, oh man, like this is bad for us. Yeah, because if it's exposing a dumb law or out of date law, yeah, okay, so maybe this has a sunset clause, but some of these ports in Alaska might be like, why are we sending any money to Vancouver?
Yeah,
it should all be Seattle. You should come out of Seattle or Bellingham or wherever and go straight to Alaska. Like, why are we sharing any wealth with these Canadians?
And that is explicitly the argument that Alaska has been making this whole time.
Yeah.
It's that, we need the money. We need the tourism money. And to be fair, if you're an Alaska politician, these are legitimate arguments to make. You are trying to bring more money home. And there is a certain, I dare not say, arrogance in thinking that it's inevitable that, of course, the cruise ships want to stop in Victoria and Vancouver. Or indeed, they have to. They don't have to. And yes, Victoria is lovely and Vancouver is lovely as well. But, I mean, there's no reason why a cruise ship can't leave Seattle and make it all the way up to Alaska. In fact, it's rather easy. It saves customs. It saves a number of things that they don't actually have to worry about. It is not an unreasonable fear, and it is explicitly what Alaska has been pushing for. And the point that is being made is that no one has been arguing on BC's behalf in Washington. The federal government was sort of caught unawares, and certainly the provincial government was.
Yeah, I mean, she was arrogant in her confidence today, but a few weeks ago when this was asked, she seemed back-footed by the question on the file. Clearly, Horgan's not paying attention to this. Like his read of American politics is shockingly poor. I know that in Vaughn Palmer's piece, he talks about how the minister, or how now the premier is like, and I've asked for a meeting now with these senators. Well, these senators actually asked for a meeting back in early February with the premier. He doesn't seem to have bothered to have gotten back to them. Talk about a gross misreading of this playbook. I'd be really careful if I were the NDP here. Like, Murkowski has a lot of power. I forget who the sponsor is of the bill in the Congress or in the House of Republicans or Representatives, but like, there's no guarantee this will be sunset, or it could be sunset and immediately brought back as a Buy America kind of thing. So, yeah, find your allies and start working on them, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. I mean, in the States, they are, and this is a gross generalization because we're talking about the United States, it's a huge country, but the trend is moving very rapidly towards everything being all the way opened.
Right.
There's full crowds at Carolina Hurricanes hockey game. There's going to be full crowds football. There's the point is that they're a lot further along than we are. And so, the argument that, well, when Canada fully reopens, Dr. Bonnie Henry has been really clear. That's a ways off.
Yeah.
Probably not this summer. So if you were a U.S. lawmaker, why on earth are you putting cruise ship passengers in a place which, by its own admission, is much behind and doesn't feel it's safe to, let its own citizens back out unrestricted into the wild? Why, in God's name, would you then release cruise ship passengers into, say, Victoria or Vancouver, and then pen them up in a cruise ship after leaving what is, it is could be easily described as a less safe environment than Seattle, Portland, Los Angeles, Ketchikan, Alaska, if only because we are so much further behind on vaccines. It's not a condemnation of Canada there, but I mean, it is not a difficult argument to picture American lawmakers making. Well, the Canadians are being cautious. Why are we being less cautious than them?
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear you talk so negatively of our wonderful one-dose summer, Maclean. No, you're exactly right. Like, what's the value? Do people, and cruise ships industry will have all sorts of stats on this, like how important are those British Columbia stops to the tourist experience? If it's marginal, if they don't feel like they get an ROI on it, they'll be more than happy to abandon those stops. So yeah, worrisome times. Let's get better at this. And for God's sakes, John Horgan, Melanie Mark, get your eye on the ball here and make sure that you're doing whatever you can to help these tourist industries. I did see briefly on Twitter that the Americans are looking at a plan or Canada's looking at, okay, maybe we reopen the border, you can go to the States and get a shot, and then we would waive quarantine for you when you come back. Tempting, sorely tempting, even though I've had my AstraZeneca already.
Yeah, but you want the good stuff now, too.
Want the bougie stuff. Well, actually, that brings me to a topic I wanted to talk about, and it's an Angus Reid poll. Just when you thought you were going to escape COVID talk on this podcast, here we go. But essentially it's a poll of Canadians asking about vaccination confidence, and vaccination confidence has gone up. 71% plan to get vaccinated. That's more than double the number in September last year. That's great. Here's the interesting thing. It's really a paradox. They asked how comfortable Canadians would be getting the AstraZeneca shot. Only 35% said they would be quote unquote comfortable getting AZ, compared to 93% who said the same of Pfizer. Okay, so that's a very small number, 35%. But here's the interesting thing. Angus Reid found that 92% of Canadians who had received the AstraZeneca vaccine are either totally pleased or okay with having got the shot, despite the concerns that have gone on. So you have a 92% okay rate with it, and yet only 35% said they'd be comfortable getting AstraZeneca. So it's an interesting change there, or an interesting dichotomy there. But then I think about it for myself, Maclean, and you and I both had AstraZeneca.
That's right.
I will say that, on the weekend I had a headache. Mm-hmm. I did count the days from my vaccination, just, where am I at? I think I'm on day 26 today. The thought did occur to me. And, I read there was a CBC or CTV article on a man from Langley, mid-40s, lives in Langley, got the AstraZeneca the same day I did, and, he lost 2 feet of his small intestine due to this clot. Am I totally pleased I got AstraZeneca? Probably not anymore. Am I okay I got AstraZeneca? Yeah, I guess I'm okay. I do know that the clot worries decrease even more on the second shot. But, if looking back, maybe I should have waited for Pfizer. It would have been 2 or 3 weeks longer, but maybe the risk profile is different. Anyways, so I kind of understand this. Like, yeah, okay, I'm pleased or okay because I'm a little bit more, or I'm much more protected against COVID than I was. 3 days away from really being outside the window of the VITT. But at the same time, maybe just a little bit of buyer's remorse.
Yeah, no, that's almost exactly how I feel. I would rather have AstraZeneca than nothing, and that's not even close. Yeah. But had I known that it would just be like literally 2 more weeks and the good shit would be waiting for me, I probably would have waited. And in fact, some of the advice we've heard is exactly that. If you can wait. It's not coming from internet cranks, but the National Advisory Council on Vaccines. And I don't know. I mean, you can't blame people for paying attention to all this stuff. I mean, we say, follow the science and trust the experts. Well, some of the experts have been saying to wait until you get Pfizer or Moderna. Yeah. And yes, there's not unanimous agreement there, but there's never unanimous agreement on any of these things. And so, I mean, there are people who are wringing their hands and cracking their knuckles over, well, a third of Canadians are hesitant about vaccines. They've been consuming all this media saying, well, there is a risk. It's not zero. And I mean, you mentioned that the gentleman in Langley. I mean, that's terrible. Yep. And there's been a handful of people who have lost their lives in Canada. Again, it's a small risk, yes, but it's not nothing, and you can't blame people for being hesitant. Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So, we'd been told for so long, the first shot offered is the best shot. Well, maybe I'm not so sure now. So we'll wait and see what happens. I know in Ontario, it sounds like they're letting a bunch of these AstraZenecas expire, which is shocking to me as well. Like send them.
That's horrible.
Like I don't know. I wouldn't. I'm trying to say,
I would in no way. If AstraZeneca was the only thing we had on offer, I with zero regret, and I'm still happy I got it.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, it sounds as though the National Advisory Council's advice. I don't think people were in a mood to hear it at the time, and I probably count myself among them. But it was very much, if you can't wait, if you're working out in the public every day, by all means, get the AstraZeneca right away. But if you're working from home, and you're in a low risk group, and your circle is extremely tight, and they're also mostly at home, why not just wait a couple weeks? To me, that is making more and more and more sense in retrospect.
Here's where I think the underplayed outcome of this is. I think a lot of the media, as we saw, rushed to get AstraZeneca. A lot of the media are in that Gen X range or older millennial, and they rushed to get it. And you and I could name names of people who went and got it. I do think that there is a lot of buyer's remorse among that group. And now there's a lot harsher, more critical eye being cast upon what's gone on, what's happening as far as response, than we've ever seen before. I think of Ian Young's piece on Little Mountain and other care homes. That is it's a scandal. I don't know how you can term it any other way. And well, scandal is almost putting it too lightly, because like most political scandals, it's money or someone got a favor. This is people died, right? Like people died because you wouldn't declare an outbreak. You weren't rapid testing. Like it's crazy. So, the coverage has changed quite a bit. There doesn't seem to be that collegial, there's Adrian Dix trying another stupid word poem again. Let's talk about how bad they all are. And here's a poll. Adrian Dix's four worst little statements, and pick your favorite. There's none of that anymore. Now I feel like the media is really sharpening up and going, hey, like this has not been good. You've made mistakes. We do want a royal commission when the time comes, when we're through this. And I do wonder if part of that is many of them feel a little bit lied to about AstraZeneca, or a little bit misled. I still think back to my AstraZeneca appointment, and the Walmart pharmacist said, okay, and here you go, and we'll be in touch with you when you're ready for your second dose. And then all of a sudden I read somewhere randomly, maybe in one of Jody's pieces, like, oh, by the way, you have to register for your second dose on this government website. Well, no, I was told that, and then, no. Yeah. And then I thought, well, no, is she saying I have to register for my first dose or I registered for a first dose, but I didn't get Pfizer or Moderna, I went there. But so how do they know? And there's no real option to be like, I'm registering for my second dose of AZ.
It's still confused. And I mean, to point of fact, this is true. I too was confused about that. So I eventually just broke down and messaged somebody in health and said, okay, listen, this is not for a story. I'm asking for me. Yeah. I registered the day I was allowed to register on the government website. I also signed up with every pharmacy I could think of. And that's how I got my first shot, AstraZeneca. And so I had seen competing advice. Do I need to register for a second thought? Do I not need to? Or was my pharmacist right when, in this case, he said, we'll be in touch? And the response back was, you only need to register once. If you've registered, you've registered. But they conceded there's an enormous amount of confusion out there by people who are, not just the general public, but I mean indeed the media who are, seeing these every day, because the message has not been consistent. No. I have heard things from people who should know better, something that is not true. I don't want to incriminate anyone here, but basically the scenario that I just outlined, that I was told, well, no, you have to do this, and this. It's not true, at least according to this person in the Ministry of Health. So. It's confusing. I mean, you mentioned that. You mentioned the AstraZeneca situation. You mentioned the Hunger Games vaccine clinics in Surrey and the COVID data leak, where it hasn't been a good couple weeks for the government on a PR front on the pandemic, which from their point of view is probably very, very frustrating, because they keep wanting to point to the vaccination and the point that's and that the progress that's being made there. But the rejoinder to that is it's not about that. Both things can be true. Yeah. The vaccine rollout is great and we're happy about it, and please keep doing it. But there's these other things that didn't go well. Yeah. And in terms of the Ian Young story, people died. Yeah. And so, yes, asking questions is entirely legitimate.
Yeah, and look, the vaccination numbers, okay, great. We're still 15 points behind Washington State. for first dose. We are 35 points behind them for second dose, like fully vaccinated people. Great, so you've dosed a couple million person. Fantastic. When's our second doses coming? Why is 120,000 people, only 120,000 people have had 2 doses of vaccine, whatever vaccine it is. That is smaller than the population of the township of Langley. I love Langley. There's a whole lot more to British Columbia than just Langley. Like, you got to have more than that. So, not to sound like Norm, I was going to say Norm Stowe, but he's working with Kevin Falcon's campaign. Norm Spector.
Norman Spector?
Not to sound like Norm Spector on Twitter, but those numbers aren't as great as you think they are, guys. I do notice, like earlier this week, there was like, reopening? What reopening? We're not going to do any reopening. We got to get these numbers. What reopening are we going to do? No. Reopening's a long way away. And now, a few more days of bad press. And next week, we're going to present our reopening plan. Oh, isn't that sweet? Like, just come on. Like, we all knew you were. Once we saw those numbers were in the 400s and falling, you have to reopen something. You can't have where kids are playing. My son's playing baseball. My daughter's playing softball. They've been practicing and practicing. Maclean, these are outdoor sports. Danica will be vaccinated by, in June, according to the pharmacy thing that's coming through. Like, there's no reason why they can't play a real baseball game. Like, we know from the science that the transmission is so rare. Okay, indoor lacrosse, indoor hockey, still, maybe you hold off on those basketball, like, until you're sure, until the fall. Okay, I see that. But come on, baseball, soccer, spring soccer, like, football, like, let these kids play. So reopening, let's get on with it. Especially, as school winds down, just swap one transmission vector for a much smaller one, which is, kids sports.
Yeah, I mean, this point came up at Dr. Bonnie Henry's briefing yesterday, and again, sort of on Twitter this morning, where I think it was Justine Hunter who was asking about people who are asking to get their second doses expedited, because, I mean, there are some real examples, several of whom I know personally, of people who are trying to travel to see dying parents. Yeah. And less seriously, things like weddings, across the country or indeed in another country. And there was some dismissal of this, which was really disappointing, saying, are you seriously asking for to move ahead of the line so you can go sit on a beach and drink daiquiris? That's not what Dr. Bonnie Henry said by any stretch. I'm talking about Twitter commentators. Yeah. And so even if you were just wanting a vacation, I think this summer we're going to start to see a lot of sort of very quiet pushback. I mean, I know, relatives of mine who have said, I'm seeing family this summer. I don't care. Yeah. I can't wait forever. I won't wait forever. We'll do it as safely as possible, but that's, at a certain point, people just stop listening. Yeah. And that's why and that's setting aside things like, I know of a couple real examples of people who are counting the days and doing everything they can to try and go leave the province to go see a dying parent. Yep. My God, we should not trivialize this stuff. And that I'm not even trivializing people who just need a break. So at a certain point, people's patience runs out, and public health officials have to be very aware of that. I'm not suggesting they're not. I'm saying it's the kind of thing that pressure will continue to build, and that's what they need to be aware of.
Well, Maclean, I mean, your son is 5, right, Ian?
6.
He's already really been robbed of one amazing summer with his grandparents.
Yep.
I know your parents live on one of the Gulf Islands, and it's a beautiful, secluded spot and wonderful. Like, that is the. Take it from a guy who's. Let me talk to you as an old man, Dad. Take it from a guy whose daughter turned 18 this year. These summers are more and more precious to us as we go along here, because suddenly we realize she's 18. Next year she could have a full-time, we may not get these kind of things again. Totally. And, we think back, we're looking through, we're doing a little slideshow of all her life, right? 18th birthday, grad, blah, blah, blah. And we're looking back and we're like, man, that trip was a great memory. That trip was a great memory. Oh, that summer at the, my in-laws had a place on Hatsick Lake. Oh, remember that. Like, those are the key pivotal memories that these kids take forward with them. And fuck yeah, they should be there. So we're gonna swear, like, of course they should. We've already robbed them of one summer with their grandparents. We're gonna rob them of another when we're all half dosed. Get the doses into people's arms as quickly as possible, and let's go on with it. I don't buy the whole, like, oh, well, they want to travel, so that's evil thing. We vaccinated everyone in Whistler because we allowed people to travel there, and it caused an outbreak. So give me a break, right? Like, like holier than thou much. Like, forget it. Grad, I can tell you, look, there's what everyone's saying is going on, and then there's what's going on under the surface. There's what everyone says is going on this summer as far as vacations, but there's what the vast majority of people are managing and doing. Same with grad. There's what we're allowed to do, and then there's what's happening under the surface as far as, we're going to manage our risk and make sure that, you have the opportunity to celebrate with your friends and family and key people. And yeah, it's not going to be anything like it was 2 years ago, but it's not going to be like last summer. Like, it's going to be better. So public health needs to get on board with this. They need to find a way to open this up safely, and they need to get these doses into arms. Like, they need to get people dosed twice. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing their best on the vaccination front, but you're right. I think that there will be an unofficial reopening and an official opening.
Well, you see it in the States, right? The States are a great example. Joe Biden, like in his speech a few weeks ago, and I believe that if we all just do our part, we can take off our masks on Independence Day, July 4th, and celebrate a picnic with a very small group of 10 people. Well, that's still a month and a half away. They've blown way past that. Their rates aren't like they are in Israel or England or other places that have really gone whole hog on vaccination. But you're right. Like, I watched that Carolina Hurricanes game. First of all, I've never felt the need to watch a Carolina Hurricanes game at Maclean. And
like ever.
God, like, I don't recall ever feeling emotional watching a Carolina Hurricanes game. When they skated on the ice and those fans rose as one, and they were screaming and yelling, and I was like, man, I want that so bad. I want to go see a Canuck game. Well, maybe not this year's Canucks, but next year's Canucks. I want to go to a BC Lions game. I want to take the kids to a Vancouver Canadians game. Like, let's do this. And
you want your life back.
You want your life back. It's been one summer without those memories already. Now stretching into two. Like, I'm not a lacrosse guy. Premier Horgan, you are. Western Lacrosse Association announced today they're canceling a second season. A second season without a Mann Cup.
Oh, did they announce that today?
Yeah, they announced it today. That is devastating for that league, which operates on a shoestring anyways. And, devastating for the sport of lacrosse. Mm-hmm. And they're putting a brave face. Well, nothing's stopping you from going out into a field and passing around with your kids and blah. No, that is, yeah. I would give anything to lose another bet to John Horgan on the Mann Cup final. Like, please, let's do it.
Best parenting advice I ever got was that you get 18 summers at best with your kid before they're going to want to go have their own summers, and so you treasure those. They are precious and they don't come back, and so make sure you don't waste them. And so, to your point, to give two away is a hard and bitter pill to swallow. It's tough.
Yeah, it's. And it's 2 summers. It's been one hockey season. Hopefully this fall is a normal hockey. We just signed him up for his fall hockey. Like, hopefully it's normal. Whatever, It's 2 baseball seasons. It's like 2 softball seasons. Well, Danica's 16 or 14. Sorry. Danica's 14, turning 15 this December. Oh man, she'll love that. She'll want this on tape. But that's her last 2 softball seasons probably. Gone. Like, she's not going on to university softball. This was it. And I just, my daughters, both of them were in the school play. Well, they're trying to tape individual parts for school play and then piece them all together. And guess what? That doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work for the Little Mermaid. It doesn't work for a chorus.
It's a noble experiment.
Yeah, God bless them. And, and I think they're realizing this isn't working. What are we going to do? And that's 2 plays that Indies missed out on.
They're trying to make a play like George Lucas, right? Yeah. Just everyone in front of a green screen trying to react to.
Yeah, with no resources. So it's such a shame, and it's time to let's put the hammer down. Let's get back to normal as quickly as possible, and don't like I'm a little bit like, okay, if you have school and you have open workplaces, what is the baseline number of cases you're comfortable with? I'm kind of there. 400 a day seems about right to me as far as, like, that's probably what's going to happen until vaccinations, especially second doses, ramp up.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I hope that the vaccination doses continue to ramp up. And everything we just set aside, I will gladly take my second AstraZeneca shots.
Yeah, me too.
And I hope it's tomorrow. It's not tomorrow. But until then, we're probably got to a dangerous.
Well, you're bad at these intros and outros today. You're struggling.
We are. It's
not you. You're bad at these intros and outros today. That'd be great.
That's true. There's a royal we. I am bad at intros and outros. He's Jordan Bateman. I'm Maclean K. I'm bad at intros and outros. Happy politics.